Your sister got all the family fortune, and I was left with a single euro. Don't spend it all at once, they laughed. But when I turned it into millions, they came back begging. I posted this a week ago on Reddit, in a forum about unfair family stories, and the number of messages I received was overwhelming. Some said I made it all up, others shared similar experiences. But this is real, it's my life. It all started on the day of my grandfather's will reading. We met at the notary's office. My mother, my father, my sister Natalia, and me. My brother Luis didn't even bother to come, as he cared more about his business on the Costa del Sol than any family drama. I wasn't expecting much, but at least something symbolic. My grandfather had money, not at the level of appearing in rich magazines, but enough so that none of his children or grandchildren would have to worry about life. Apparently, Natalia gets the property in Marbella, the bank account with the family funds, and the company shares, the notary read. Silence. To Claudia, the man cleared his throat, corresponds €1. I thought it was a mistake. My mother barely looked at me, she just sighed with discomfort. My father said nothing as always, and Natalia smiled. Well, €1 is also money, she said. And Luis, who had arrived at the last minute, laughed. Don't spend it all at once, he said between bursts of laughter. The others also laughed. At that moment I didn't say anything. I just took the envelope with the €1 bill and kept any emotion to myself. A memory that explains everything. I could say I was surprised, but that wouldn't be true. My grandfather never loved me too much. It's not that he was cruel, I just didn't fit in with what he expected from a good granddaughter. He was one of those men who believe they are always right. No matter the subject, he knew everything and the rest of us were ignorant. My sister Natalia understood this from a young age, and knew how to play the perfect role. She always agreed with him, always said what he wanted to hear. You're right, Grandpa. You're so wise, Grandpa. And he adored her for it. I, on the other hand, had the bad habit of asking questions and not keeping quiet. I remember one Christmas when I was about 9 years old, we were at his house and he gave Natalia a huge teddy bear, almost the size of an adult. I received a smaller box. When I opened it, I found an old dictionary. Smart girls read, he said, without looking at me too much. My mother smiled and gave me a slight nudge, as if telling me to be grateful. Thank you, Grandpa. Don't waste your time with nonsense, Claudia, he added before turning to Natalia to ask if she liked her gift. At that moment I didn't understand, but over the years it became clear to me. For him, Natalia was the perfect granddaughter because she never contradicted him. I, on the other hand, had too much of my own opinion and he didn't like that. It wasn't just that moment, it was everything. If Natalia fell, he would pick her up immediately. If I scraped my knee, he would tell me not to make a drama. When Natalia turned 18, he bought her a car. I had to save up to buy myself a second-hand bicycle. Over the years I learned not to expect anything from him, and in the end that's exactly what he left me. Nothing. After the will reading, no one in my family mentioned the subject. There were no calls, nothing, as if what happened at the notary's office had never happened. But I couldn't forget it. When I arrived at my 25-square-meter apartment, I threw the envelope with the single euro on the table and stared at it. Don't spend it all at once, I whispered, imitating Luis's voice. And there, alone in my hovel, I started to laugh, an ugly laugh, the kind you get when you're on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Because if I didn't laugh, I would probably cry. It wasn't just the money, it was the fact that they left me with nothing, and they didn't even have the decency to pretend they cared. My bank account was in the red, I had no job, I had no margin for error. Housework or how to lose your dignity in a week. I spent the next few days sending resumes everywhere. Restaurants, stores, offices, it didn't matter. I got a call from a coffee shop for a trial. 10-hour shifts, miserable salary, heavy customers. I accepted without thinking. The first day, a group of customers arrived, the kind that looked like they came out of a business magazine. Expensive suits, brand-name watches, the whole package. They sat at the back table and started talking loudly about investments, startups, and millions. If the company doesn't generate at least $20,000 a month, it's not worth it, said one, drinking his coffee as if he were drinking liquid gold. The problem is not the money, replied another, looking at his cell phone. The problem is how to make it work for you. That's where I stood frozen, not because I wanted to be like them, but because I didn't even have a single euro working for me. I was the one serving coffees while they talked about business. That night when I got home I was so tired my feet ached. I collapsed on the bed with my clothes on, but instead of falling asleep, I grabbed my laptop and started reading about business. Not because I wanted to be a millionaire, I wanted to get out of the mess I was in. The first attempt and the first failure. After several nights reading until the wee hours, I had an idea. I saw an online course on selling secondhand items, and I thought I can do this. I had a couple of things at home that I didn't use and I put them up for sale on a resale app. Nothing happened for 3 days. Then a message. Is it available? My fingers were shaking as I typed. Yes, of course. I sold my first item for $25. It was a silly thing, but it was the first time I earned money without a boss exploiting me. So I started looking for more things to sell. I checked all the closets, every corner of my house, but I had nothing else. So I went to secondhand markets. I bought an old jacket for €5 and sold it for 30. I bought a bag for 8 and sold it for 50. And that's where I understood something. The problem is not the money, the problem is how to make it work for you. I realized that I could live without depending on a boss. I just had to learn how to play the game right. That was the first piece of the puzzle, but the real change came later, when those who mocked me began to realize that I was no longer in the same place where they left me. After my first €1,000, it was all a snowball. Every month I earned more. €2,500, then 5,000, then 8,000. My routine became almost automatic: buy, restore, publish, sell. But there was a problem. I was exhausted. Sometimes I spent 14 hours a day managing orders, answering customers, organizing shipments. One day, after answering more than 60 messages in one afternoon, I felt my vision blurring. I looked at myself in the mirror and looked like a zombie with dark circles the size of my emotional debt to the therapist I still couldn't afford. Either I hire someone or I die, I said aloud. I resisted for a few more weeks, but when I saw that I was rejecting sales because I didn't have time, I understood that I needed help. The team that changed everything. First, I hired Anna, a girl who was in charge of answering messages and uploading the ads. Then Danny, who did the shipping and organized the warehouse. Then Raul, who had contacts with suppliers and got exclusive products. And finally Laura, who had experience in digital marketing and helped me scale everything 3 times faster. In 4 months, I went from being a single person to a team of 6 employees. Now we no longer only sold on secondhand platforms, but we opened our own online store. We paid for ads, optimized shipments, negotiated with larger suppliers. The result? Income tripled. The online store was already generating more than €30,000 a month. But it wasn't enough for me. I wanted more. Opening a physical store, the big leap. I had the idea in my head for months. Selling online was great, but there were products that people wanted to see and touch before buying. I needed a physical space. I searched for premises for weeks. Some were too expensive, others were in areas with no customer traffic. Until I found the right one. It was a small place but well located. The rent cost almost €3,000 a month, but I wasn't worried about those things anymore. When I signed the contract, I had that feeling of panic mixed with excitement. I was investing €50,000 to renovate it. It was crazy, but it was my craziness. The day of the inauguration, I didn't know if anyone would come. But people came, many people. Customers from the online store, people who had seen the ads, curious people passing by. We sold almost €8,000 on the first day. That night, when we closed and I was left alone in the store, I looked around and thought, my grandfather would be turning in his grave if he knew this. Because yes, in the end I started a real business. And not just any business, one that was already generating more than €50,000 a month. The family starts to smell the money. I hadn't spoken to my family in almost a year after the will reading. I simply disappeared. But one day, after the store appeared in an article about entrepreneurs, I got a message from my mother. Mom. Hi daughter. How nice to see you're doing so well. We didn't know anything about you. Why don't you come to dinner with the family? Of course they didn't know anything about me until my name appeared in the press. 2 days later Natalia wrote to me. Natalia. Auntie, I saw the thing about your store. Congratulations. I always knew you'd go far. Hey, we should see each other. I have an idea that might interest you. I always knew you'd go far. Seriously? Because the last time I saw her, she was laughing at the fact that I was left with €1 in the inheritance. And it didn't end there. The following week, my father called me. Dad, hi daughter. We've been thinking. Your business is growing. And well, family should always support each other. Maybe we could help you with the management. Translation: they want a piece of the action. The next day, another message from Luis. Luis. Hey Claw, how's it going? I have a friend who could invest in your company. It would be great if you considered it. We're family after all. Alright, we're family. A few days later, my mother went directly to the store. Claudia. Her voice sounded false, too enthusiastic. I'm so glad to see you. What do you want, Mom? I asked bluntly. She acted offended. How can you say that? I just came to see how you are, and to tell you that I've been thinking. Maybe it's time for you to come back to the family. Come back to the family, I repeated, after they gave me €1. Oh honey, don't see it that way, she sighed. Your grandfather had his way of doing things, but the important thing is that now we can start from scratch. From scratch? Yes, look, Natalia and Luis have talked to an advisor, and they think it would be best if we split the company between the four of us. The four of us? Well, yes, we helped you get here. I laughed in her face. You helped me? Well, it shows. When I was washing dishes in a cafeteria to survive, where were you? When they laughed in my face because of the will, who helped me? She didn't know what to answer. I'm sorry, but this company is mine alone. She remained silent, then pursed her lips and uttered the phrase I was waiting for. How selfish you've become. I crossed my arms. I'm not selfish, I'm just not stupid anymore. It wasn't enough that they had laughed in my face when they left me with €1. It wasn't enough that they had ignored me when I was scrubbing dishes for minimum wage. No, now that my business was generating more than $50,000 a month, now we were family, and of course they thought they were entitled to a share. The first attack. Emotional manipulation. After the conversation with my mother at the store, I thought they would drop the subject, but no. Luis, Claudia, think about it. It doesn't make sense for you to manage everything alone. We are your siblings, we have always been a team. The last time we were a team was when I was 10 years old and he forced me to give him my savings so he could buy a video game. Mom. Honey, I don't want you to think that we are pressuring you. But family must support each other. You can't be so resentful. Your grandfather hurt you, but we didn't. It wasn't them who laughed in my face on the day of the will. It was them who did nothing when Natalia took everything. Natalia. Claw, can we talk in person? I don't want you to misinterpret our intentions. My intentions are transparent. I want them to leave me for dead, just as they left me for dead when I had no money. But they weren't going to take no for an answer. The second attack. The family business trap. A week later, my mother insisted that I go to dinner at her house. I don't know why I went, maybe because deep down I was still curious to see how far they would go. When I arrived, they were all already sitting at the table. Natalia, Luis, my parents. They even brought a lawyer. Claudia, my mother began, serving me wine as if this were a normal dinner. We know you've worked hard to build your business. Thank you for noticing, I said with a sarcastic smile. But we've been thinking, my father intervened with his business tone, that it would be good to formalize everything and turn it into a family business. Family business, I repeated. Yes, said Luis with a false kindness that made me want to vomit. Something more structured. Now that the business is stable, we can help you with administration, growth, investments. Natalia cleared her throat and slid a document across the table. This is a proposal to turn your business into a family partnership, she explained, as if she were doing me a favor. That way we could all contribute and have a fair share. I raised an eyebrow. Fair. Well, yes, she continued. You would have 40% because you were the one who started it, but the other 60% would be divided between Mom, Dad, Luis, and me. I burst out laughing, a real laugh. Wait, are you telling me that you, who haven't moved a finger, are going to take 60% of my company just because you have my last name? Don't see it that way, Claw, Natalia smiled. We're doing it for the good of everyone. For the good of everyone, I repeated. Luis crossed his arms, going into aggressive mode. You can't handle it alone. Sooner or later you're going to need support. It's better for us to join now than for you to have to sell to strangers later. My father nodded. If you look at it, it's a smart strategy. It keeps the business in the family. Mom sighed with her. I'm telling you this for your own good face. We can't continue to be divided, Claudia. It's time for you to think about the family. There it was, the phrase. Think about the family. Family is the most important thing. They were saying it, the same people who abandoned me when I needed them most. I took the document, reviewed it briefly, and then looking them straight in the eyes, I tore it to shreds. My answer is no. Natalia rolled her eyes. Claudia, for God's sake, don't be childish. Childish was what you were when you left me with €1 to laugh in my face. Luis slammed his fist on the table. You always have to play the victim. I'm not a victim, Luis. I'm the only person at this table who has actually worked. Dad rubbed his temples, trying to control his anger. Daughter, don't turn this into a fight. I'm not fighting. I'm simply not interested in sharing my company with a family who never believed in me. Silence. For the first time I saw panic in their eyes. They didn't expect me to say no. Mom tried one last low blow. Honey, we raised you, we gave you everything. I leaned towards her. You gave me nothing, Mom. Ever since I can remember, I've earned everything myself. I got up, grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Claudia, my father called out in a harsh voice. Don't be stupid. This is a... I turned around just to give them the final blow. Yes, an opportunity. For you. Because I don't need you. And I left. The third attack. The final betrayal. I thought it would end there, but no. 2 weeks later, I received an urgent call from my lawyer. Lawyer. Claudia, we need to talk. Your family tried to register a business with the same name as yours. I was stunned. Lawyer. They have filed documents to open a company with a trade name almost identical to yours. If you don't move fast, they can try to steal your customers and damage your image. So this was their plan B. If they couldn't take my company legally, they were going to try to sink me so that I had no choice but to accept their help. They had declared war. Lawyer. Claudia, we need to talk. Your family tried to register a business with the same name as yours. I was stunned. Lawyer. They have filed documents to open a company with a trade name almost identical to yours. If you don't move fast, they can try to steal your customers and damage your image. So this was their plan B. If they couldn't take my company legally, they were going to try to sink me so that I had no choice but to accept their help. They had declared war. But what they didn't know was that I was ready to fight. They tried to manipulate me with the excuse of family. They tried to take my business away with papers and lawyers. And when that didn't work, they tried to steal my own name. But they made one mistake. They underestimated me. The counterattack. If you want to play dirty, be prepared. After the call from my lawyer, the first thing I did was legally protect my company. I registered the trade name, trademarks, and requested a precautionary measure to block any attempt by my family to operate under a similar name. The next day, Natalia called me. Natalia. Claw, you're overreacting. What we did is perfectly legal. You tried to steal the name of my company, Natalia. It's not yours. You didn't patent it before, and besides, we are family. We could have reached an agreement without lawyers. I laughed. You know what's funny? Before my business was successful, you didn't care at all. Silence. We just want everyone to win. Win? After you tried to take 60% of my company. Don't see it that way, Claw. We just want the best for you. The best for me is for you to disappear. I hung up. But this wasn't over. The fall of the perfect family. In less than a month, my family got into worse trouble than they imagined. Because not only did I register the trademark, I also sued them for business fraud. When Luis tried to open bank accounts with the new business, the banks blocked everything. When Natalia tried to attract customers using my reputation, she received a lawsuit for trademark infringement. And best of all, when they tried to apply for a loan to invest in their business, they were rejected. Because the whole family was in debt. Yes, in debt. Because while I was working to create something from scratch, they were squandering the inheritance money. Mom. Honey, this has gotten out of control. We can't let the family be destroyed over a silly thing. Dad. Claudia, negotiate with us. Don't be selfish. Luis. You've become a despicable person. But when all this is over, you're going to need the family. Don't forget that. Yeah, right. Meanwhile, I opened my third store. I was interviewed on television. I was invited to a young entrepreneur's event. And every time they said my name in public, my family writhed in anger because they realized they couldn't do anything to stop me. The end. Karma comes alone. I didn't see my family again until almost a year later. One morning I walked into a coffee shop, and in the back I saw Natalia arguing with a lawyer. I approached just out of curiosity. "Hi." Natalia looked up and turned white as a ghost. "What are you doing here?" She spat. "Having a coffee. What about you?" She didn't answer, but I saw the papers on the table. A foreclosure notice. That's when I understood everything. They had lost everything. I leaned toward her with a smile. What a shame the family hasn't been able to support each other, right? Her look would have killed me if it could have. I turned and walked away, feeling the sweetest victory of my life. They left me with €1. I left them with nothing. Final update, responding to comments and what I really feel about all this. I didn't expect my story to blow up so much here on Reddit. Honestly, I posted it because I needed to vent because I'm still processing everything that happened, and wow, did I get responses. Some comments have been supportive, from people who have been through similar situations and understand what it's like to be the family outcast. Others have been harsher. I'm going to answer some of them. You are spiteful. Family is family no matter what happens. God, if I had €1 for every time someone told me this, I'd already have another store. This idea that family should be untouchable, no matter how much they hurt you, is what keeps so many people trapped in toxic relationships. They left me with nothing. They laughed in my face. They saw me struggling and didn't care. But the moment they saw I was successful, there they appeared. Not out of love, not because they cared, but because they wanted something. So no, I didn't owe them anything. You were cruel too. You destroyed your own family. I'm going to be honest, yes, I enjoyed watching them fall. When I saw my sister with the foreclosure papers, when I realized that her arrogance had turned into desperation, I felt something I'm not going to deny: satisfaction. Because it wasn't accidental, they dug their own grave. Are you a bad person for laughing in their faces? Maybe. But if anyone tells me that in my place they would have been a saint and would have extended a hand to them after all, they're lying. But that doesn't mean there isn't something inside me that still weighs heavily. At the end of the day, you're still their daughter, you're still their sister. Are you really going to live with this hate forever? This is what has made me think the most. Because believe it or not, I don't hate my family. Sometimes I wake up at night and I wonder, what if things had been different? Sometimes I find myself remembering small good moments. A vacation when I was a child, my mother combing my hair for school, the time my brother defended me in the schoolyard. That doesn't disappear just because they did what they did. It's my family, and as much as it hurts, I know that at some point in my life, I'm going to have to see them again. Maybe it will be at my mother's funeral. Maybe it will be when one of them, broken by life, knocks on my door looking for help. And I don't know what I'm going to do when that time comes. I don't know if I'll be able to give them another chance or if I'll just close the door. I don't know if I'll ever be able to sit down to eat with them without feeling angry about everything they did to me. The only thing I know is that for the first time in my life, the decision will be mine. And that, at least, gives me peace. Thank you all for reading and for your comments, whether good or bad. I don't know what will happen in the future, but for now I'm going to keep doing what I do best, being the owner of my own life.